Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships and a supporter spotlight that I've been trying to do for like a week now. So yeah, here we are finally. This is Andy CX, who is possibly my longest running Patreon supporter at this point, or one of my longest running ones anyway, and he's going to be showing off a ship I don't think you see all that often, on a line that you don't see all that often. It's the light but really American cruisers on the Pan-Asian line, and they're all basically evolutions of the same sort of concept, more or less. The top tiers are, anyway. And that concept is essentially, you know, Turbo Atlanta. So this thing, as you can see, not a lot of hit points. Also doesn't have a lot of health, and it's got a kind of a short range. I mean, it's up to about, what, 15 kilometers, but given that these are 5-inch guns, US 5-inch guns, I mean, that's probably about at the absolute maximum that you're going to be able to hit anything reliably with anyway, just because of how wild those arcs are. I mean, maybe something stationary that's further away, but it's not going to have to start moving much to throw off your aim for the time it takes for your shells to get there. So because this thing is so squishy, you need cover, and you either need island cover or you need to use your smoke, which of course this does have. It's Pan-Asian smoke though, so it doesn't last a huge amount of time, but you do get an okay number of charges for a cruiser anyway. Most cruisers don't do as well for smoke as their destroyer counterparts, and this is no exception. It's also got decent torpedoes, and we will see some torpedo action in this game in a bit. And we'll even, I think, get to see the reload booster, which is not something you necessarily get to use hugely often. It's one of the ways they've made up for this being quite a fragile ship, is they've given it lots of consumables to work with. And it does have a heal as well on top of all the others, but it's not a super strong heal, so it's best not to rely on it. It's not like a British super heal where you can basically print yourself half of a new ship if need be. So that's him being radared by the Petro. So good news is it's not going to last terribly long, but he does need to be a bit careful that nobody decides to target him, because you can get blapped very easily. It's less than 30,000 hit points and a tier 9 cruiser. And his smoke's about to run out anyway, so he is going to duck into the cover of this island. It's really only the GK that could hit him right now, and that GK, well, they've just died, so that's not such a big issue anymore. What else can he shoot at? Well, we've got the Petro and the, was it the Thunderer, or is that slightly out of range? There's something else that's just about in range. I don't think the Thunderer is, no, the Thunderer's definitely not in range. And he's going to have to rely on other people to spot for him while he's pew-pewing things, just because he does have that fragility. And actually we can tell the Yamagiri is close enough to spot him there, so he's peeked out a little bit, but he's not going to risk it. He could use another smoke here, but he'd rather use the island cover. Well, unfortunately that Yamagiri is slightly ruining his fun. Not completely, he can still get his rear turrets out on this Yoshino, but yeah, it's not quite what he'd like, clearly. He's chancing it a little bit by pushing back out again. He's testing the waters, so to speak, see if the Yoshino spots him. Not the Yoshino, the Yamagiri. And the Yamagiri does, I think, briefly spot him there. There we go, we can actually see him on the map now, now that the Stalingrad's popped a radar. But I don't think there's anything else. Like, the Thunderer might be able to get a shot, so yeah, he's taking his chances here. The Yoshino's clearly focused elsewhere at the moment, and like I said, the Thunderer might have had a shot, but I don't think they will do at this point. So even though he is, or was spotted, and they know well where he is, you know, there are other more important targets right now, because he's just having to sit here and clink away and hope to set some fires. I don't know if he's got IFHE on this. I don't know what the meta is for this line, whether it's considered better to try and boost your fire chance or to take IFHE and increase your penetration. I mean, you do have enough pen for superstructures and against things like destroyers and whatnot, and some very thin cruiser armor, but yeah, I'm struggling to remember if you actually get any extra useful amount of penetration with IFHE with these guns. I'm not sure that you do, but I might be misremembering. So he's going to pop out, take a little punt at this Aegea. He could maybe have fired some AP shells there at closer ranges. The AP is not to be neglected, but I think he's just, I don't know, just concentrating on hitting the thing rather than trying to optimize his ammo choices at any particular given moment. Now, unfortunately, coming out this way means he's in spotting radius of stuff to the east, and the stuff to the east is firing at him, including that Schlieffen, which is potentially very unpleasant. There's also a Smolensk there, which is kind of the template of this thing, I suppose, at the high tiers. Except the Smolensk has more effective smoke. It has less of a toolbox overall, and it's certainly got more of a trollish armour layout. More in terms of it being a little bit harder to citadel, and I think overall more hit points. But yeah, those 130 mils are pretty nasty when a Smolensk is sat there smoked up. But the bigger guns are, I think, the priority here. So yeah, he's taking out that Schlieffen, or trying to help take out that Schlieffen, and doing a pretty decent spread of torpedoes as well. He actually used his reload booster there, which you almost want to kind of use early just because it has such a long cooldown. There is a special commander, I forget the commander's name, but there is a special Pan-Asian commander that's torpedo focused. I think if you get 6 torpedo hits, it gives you a bunch of bonuses, including shorter cooldown on your reload booster and an extra charge of it. I think I've actually got that guy in the Kunming, which is the tier 11 destroyer. But you could conceivably make use of it in one of the that captain in one of the high tier cruisers as well. Anyway, they were a bit of a safety measure, I suppose, those torpedoes. They didn't actually get the Schlieffen, but he has gotten a... I don't know if they were even really meant for the Smolensk or if the Schlieffen was his main target, but yeah, he's actually managed to just about nuke that Smolensk. I was almost trying to say Moskva there. No, not Moskva, definitely Smolensk. So yeah, it was kind of wasted on the Schlieffen, but actually not really wasted, because he ended up hitting the Smolensk pretty hard instead. Anyway, in terms of map control, I mean, there was a bit of a tussle over A. Neither side took it, but we now have the enemy Petro pushing in there. The Stalingrad is still alive, and we've got 2 caps, but yeah, that healthy Vermont is pushing this cap, and we also know that the surviving destroyers on this side as well, because... Ooh, ouch. That could have been worse, but it was still sore. Yeah, because of the torpedoes, obviously. The torpedoes is the giveaway. So he's going to need to be able to spot the Yamagiri. Is it the Yamagiri? I'm not actually sure which... I can't quite see. The minimap on my second monitor is not quite big enough. Oh, a slight packet loss there. Yeah, so if it's... well, not if it's anything. It doesn't really matter which it is. He can't torpedo it because these, of course, are deep water torps. But he might get some torps into the Vermont, and he's only got about 2 minutes left before the torpedo booster comes back as well, which might prove to be handy if the Vermont is alive for that long. And unfortunately, yes, the Vermont's found a more than Vermont-sized gap in that torpedo spread, but it was definitely a suboptimal angle for that kind of drop. So there's another fire going. We're over 100k damage at this point. His smoke is about to run out though, and you don't necessarily want to be broadside to a Vermont. So yeah, he's kind of got to get moving. This does have good concealment. I mean, it kind of has to have good concealment to balance out all of the other challenges that it faces. So we'll see in a second if his concealment is good enough to not get picked up by that Vermont, who is only about 9 kilometers away. It might be good enough. I'm not sure offhand. Now, because these are... Oh, there we go. It's not even 9, is it? Is that 8 point something? Yeah, it's pretty close. Again, second monitor, not particularly... Oh, it is over 9. Anyway, so second monitor is not particularly high resolution. I was actually... This is a complete aside, but this is mostly just pew-pewing to try and finish off this Vermont, and hoping his torpedoes finish off the job. It looks like one's going to clip them. But yeah, I was just idly looking at monitors, because I'm still on... ouch. I'm still on a fairly antiquated 1080 by 920 main monitor, and an even more antiquated 1280 by 1024 second monitor. And you basically can't buy 4x3 PC monitors anymore. There are very, very few options. I think I found one Chinese brand that looked like it was doing fairly... like they didn't look like they were particularly good quality, and you certainly can't get things like OLED monitors in 4x3. So if I was going to go and modernise my monitor setup at some point, which I don't know if I'd ever go beyond 2K, 4K seems like a bit of a waste to me. And, you know, I bought the 4070 card that I did specifically with the notion that I'm probably never going to go beyond... like even some games with the fancy ray tracing, you put it on at 1080p and it can chug a little bit, even with the 4070, but it sort of depends on the optimization, I guess. Like some games it looks pretty good, but other games it's kind of not worth the extra strain it puts the card under, even at 1080p. But yeah, if I do get more better monitors at some point, I'm going to have to get two 16x9s and then put one of them in a vertical configuration, because nobody does 4x3 monitors anymore. It's kind of weird. You would think there would be at least a market for them on like retail displays and things, but I don't know, maybe that's just not the kind of thing that you look on Amazon and other sites for. I don't know. Maybe that's specifically that market that those rather cheap looking Chinese 4x3 monitors I found were, which were all basically bog standard liquid crystal display. So yeah, anyway, that had nothing to do with anything. It's just me constantly remarking on my second monitor that made me think of that. We're now over 200k, and Andy has used the last of his smoke. We've come down to 2 versus 1. It's just this Vermont that's left. He kind of needs to not get spotted. He could risk open fire here, and I mean they're behind on points, so the onus is on Andy and his teammate to do something, and do something relatively quick, because there are only 4.5 minutes left, and it's going to take a fair chunk of that time for the Kitakaze to get to the A cap. And by that point, well, yeah, so there's no just like, oh, we'll cap and it's fine. They really do kind of have to kill this Vermont, who is doing the sensible thing and going for the C cap. And Andy's a little hesitant to open fire here, but he kind of has to, so he's observed, I presume, that the Vermont's guns are pointed kind of to the west, and the Vermont actually is going to turn their entire ship here to get their guns on, but also because that puts them behind cover behind that island. And this is not ideal, but yeah, I don't really think Andy has a lot of choice here. He just kind of has to take his chances with RNG. The Vermont is at least low health. Andy has done some damage. He does himself have some heals left, but you know, this could all be... Ooh, this could all be over in a hot instant. And then that would basically be it. I mean, okay, they're starting to cap the A-cap, especially if Andy goes down. And there's no way that then that Kitakaze gets to kill the Vermont in time. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But it's sort of dependent on that Vermont now. Are they going to be sensible and sit behind the island? Or are they going to be greedy and try and pop out and get Andy? And this is not a fantastic situation to be in as a player, because you're entirely reliant on somebody doing something silly rather than being sensible. And as it turns out, the Vermont does something silly. They back out. And Andy is in a very high risk position here, but also he's banked on this guy doing something silly, this Vermont, and has put torpedoes out accordingly. And even if they didn't find their mark, well, it is a torpedo that does it, but it was so low health that it was a 1 or 2 more volleys of gunfire away from dying anyway. So yeah, that turned into some fairly high-risk plays at the end there, but it kind of needed to, and it did pay off for Andy. And it's kind of like a lot of that was spent in smoke pew-pewing, but that's just the nature of this ship, and it did have a somewhat exciting ending to that match, which if things are going well, shouldn't really happen, but of course this is an online multiplayer game, so things going well is very far from guaranteed. Anyway, apologies to Andy for this taking quite so long to actually produce into a video. The next one will probably be messing around in operations, because of course the latest patch has brought the biggest change to ops that we've had in a while, in that you can now do up to tier, well, I was going to say tier 10, but no, it's tier 10 and super ships, so tier 10 and 11. You can now do up to top tiers, and that has changed the nature of some ops quite considerably, and also changed the value of some ships at different tiers considerably. Anyway, that's enough waffle for now though. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, you can do all the usual things underneath it, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.